All right, so let's now have a look at how we can actually reduce procrastination, specifically using this BEDS-M framework. And I've drawn a little bed up here just to make it easier for you to remember it. And this is it's just a very small, very simple framework. It's something that's relatively basic. I'm going to go into a more comprehensive framework that many of you may already actually know of anyway, called the peer-peer system later on. But this is something that I think if you're really just a total beginner and you just want to get a handle on procrastination much more quickly, this is just some basic guidelines that you should definitely follow. Now, okay, here's the thing, is that the system that I'm going to teach you, this kind of checklist that you can go through, the BEDS-M checklist, it works. It actually works. And when I say it actually works, I really mean it seriously works. As in, if you do it, you will remove procrastination. It will work. Yet, I get about probably 30% of students not finding success by using this. Okay, so there's about a 30% failure rate on this technique. Yet I'm saying that this, like pretty much, like maybe not 100%, but like 99.9%, this will work. So what's the deal? Why is there a 30% failure rate? Okay, the reason is every single one of these people that fail, without exception, as in across the thousands of students that I've worked with, I have never, ever seen someone who was in this 30% failure rate that actually used it fully. They're usually like, oh, I'll just use the B. Or I'll just use the B and then the D. Oh, that should be enough for me. And then a month later, I might email them and say, hey, how's everything going? How's your procrastination? And they're like, oh yeah, no, it didn't really work for me. And then I'll tell them, hey, can you give me your work? Let me review it. What's going on? And they'll send it to me. And it's like, my friend, you have used 40% of the system. Why are you only using 40% of the system? Do you care that little? Are you that unwilling to take control over your life so much that you're willing to just sacrifice all of your productivity for it? So you need to kind of take this seriously, and you need to sort of take yourself seriously a little bit as well and really be in control of your actions and sort of take ownership for it. Mum's not going to come help you and save you. It's up to you. You're the owner of your own success. And if you're learning a system like this, which like it seriously works, and you just don't apply it fully, or you just do it as the minimum amount of thing. And I know that when you're going through school, there's a tendency to learn to do the minimum amount of work. Okay? The minimum, the bare minimum that we need to do. But this is not the time to be doing the bare minimum. This is your life we're talking about. Again, it's a skill. It's not a subject. No one's going to assess you on this except for yourself 20 years from now, looking back at whether you regret the way you lived your life. So don't do the bare minimum. Do the maximum. Do your best. Really try hard. Don't just say you're someone that works hard. Actually put the proverbial money where your mouth is and, really sink your teeth into this and give it a go. So anyway, little rant over. Let's get into the BEDS-M system and actually go through what it is. A few pictures to indicate to you what each thing is. You may recognize a few things. You may have ideas about what they are, but let's get into it. So the first thing, the B here stands for burnt ships or burn the ships. Okay, the burnt ships strategy. Now, there's some interesting history behind this. It comes up in a lot of war manuals. It's come up in a very famous book called Art of War by Sun Tzu, which is, listed as one of the greatest books that's ever written. It's literally a manual for war written by a Chinese war general, like a very long time ago. But this burnt ship strategy, actually, as far as we know, originated from a guy called Cortez. And in summary, what he said was that he was invading a foreign land. And when his soldiers arrived on shore, what he told them was, men, burn the ships. And so they arrived on this foreign land to invade. And what they did is they actually burnt their ships. Why did they do this? They did this so that there was no way out. No way out. There was no chance of escape. So the burnt ship strategy says that if you really want to get something done, you want to make it so that there's no chance for failure. If you screw it up, there's no escape. There's no consolation prize. There's not a lot of times when you're studying and when you're at school where you can like burn your ships. You can't like get to school and say, Mom, I need you to blow up the car now. That's not how it works. It's like you get to school and then you burn your house down. That's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm saying is that you want to make the consequences of failure higher, something that you truly fear. So let's use a very simple example, okay? You need to go home and you need to study. So let's say that you're planning on studying at 5 p.m. and you want to get 2 hours of solid work done that evening, and you're planning on doing that between 5 to 6 p.m. And then after dinner, maybe you're planning on doing that from 7:30 till 8:30 p.m. That's your goal. This is your goal for the day. Now, if you really want to make sure that you get this goal done, what you might do is you might tell your parents that this is your goal and to check with you afterwards. So here are some ideas. Get your parents to check that you did this. Tell your friends. And you have to send your friends some photos that you've done it. And if you don't send your friends the photos, or if they think, I'm not really sure if you really studied, you might even get them to actually even quiz you so that, they know that you actually sat down and properly learned it. You didn't just cram through and write a bunch of notes. So you might get your friends to do that. And you might say, if I don't, I owe you one massive favor, or you can make me do any kind of dare, and you have to do it. And you've got social punishment if you don't do it. Famous example, there's this YouTuber called Thomas Frank, and he had a burnt ship strategy when it comes to waking up early in the morning. And he rigged up this thing where automatically, if he doesn't wake up and I think turn his alarm off or scan a certain thing in his bathroom or something like that, within, I think, 5 or 10 minutes of the alarm going off, it would automatically tweet out something to his lots of followers, where the first 50 people would get given $5 or something like that, or $10. So for him, not waking up early actually meant he's going to lose some hard code cash. So maybe you want to have something like that. Maybe tell your parents, you know what? If I don't do this, I'm going to give you, $50. So a lot of people are very afraid of using the burnt ship strategy. And honestly, when I started using this as well, I was pretty terrified as well, because I was like, wow, I seriously do not want to suffer these I did all of this stuff. I made consequences that were seriously, I will never be able to go out in public ever again. And it was scary, and it worked, because you just do not give yourself the option. So I often say procrastination is one of those things that we give it this big fancy word, procrastination. It's like magic. It's like, oh, it must be like this phenomenon of human psychology. It just exists. It's unescapable. It's the law of the universe. Like the universe itself is sending its energy in order to make me procrastinate. But it's totally not. Procrastination is a very beatable thing. In a way, it's a very modern sort of thing. It's basically our brain saying, I don't want to do anything that's not important. It doesn't want to do anything that's not relevant. Because again, just like how it will forget things that's not relevant and important, if something doesn't seem like it's worth the effort, if you can't see the gain from it, and often, again, because going back to the cave theory, we don't tend to live very long, so short-term gain was actually a lot more important than long-term gain. It's better to make sure you stay alive that week than plan about what you're going to do 10 years from now, because you might not even be alive next year. So our brain is kind of hardwired to really prioritize this short-term gain. So your brain is saying, look, I don't know how much short-term gain I'm getting from this thing, so it doesn't seem like it's very important. So I'm just going to go do something else instead, which is less energy consuming, because these calories are extremely important for me to stay alive. Your brain doesn't realize that there's such a thing as supermarkets now and processed sugar. So because of that, your brain, good on it for trying to keep you safe and alive and not use up all your calories, is saying, this is not worth it, so I'm going to procrastinate. But let's say some crazed killer escapes prison and then holds your whole family hostage and somehow managed to kidnap everyone you've ever met and loved, and says, hey, if you don't study, I'm going to torture everyone that you've ever met. You're going to study. You're going to say, okay, screw the brain. Okay, don't tell me it's not important. Everyone's life is on the line. You will have instantaneously just solved procrastination. Okay. Or if I said to you, I want you to wake up at 5:30 a.m. every single day for the next 2 weeks and study for 2 focused hours before you go to school every single day. And if you do that, I'm going to give you $10,000 cold hard cash every single day. By the end of the week, you can make $70,000 just by studying for 10 hours that week. So if you do that, you're probably not going to procrastinate, right? So the idea here is that when you use the burnt shift strategy, you're making a decision that you care about your development enough, that you're willing to put yourself under the pump and give yourself serious consequences, and you're not afraid. And the thing is, if you're afraid of the consequences, good. Just don't fail. It's as simple as that, really. So you don't want to make goals that are like ridiculously hard. You don't want to say, okay, I'm going to study from 5 to 6:47, and then at 7:30 to 8:30, I'm going to study exactly. And I only did till 6:46, therefore I need to, suffer the consequence. You want to have goals that are relatively achievable. You want to have goals that are very specific and relatively simple, but ones that are going to be pretty meaningful still. All the stuff that I've talked about in the previous videos. You want to use those types of goals and that type of scheduling and that type of prioritization, okay? So that's the B, that's the burnt ships strategy that we can use. And then the E actually stands for environment, okay? So what do I have here? What I have here, and it might not be a drawing that's good enough to actually tell what it is, this is meant to be a cookie jar. And so I have this thing that I call the cookie jar effect. And anyone that's come to a seminar or a workshop or course by me has probably heard me talk about the cookie jar effect before. The deal is that I really like cookies, okay? I like a lot of different types of cookies, but there's something about a classic choc chip or a butterscotch biscuit or the like Girl Scout cookies with like the sugar on top of them. There's something about those cookies that just really does it for me. And I love those cookies. I will eat those cookies like a chain smoker. I wouldn't even wait for myself to finish swallowing. I just like cookie after cookie after cookie. And so that's not good for my health and life and my, my obesity rate. So I don't want to ingest a lot of cookies. But for me, the thing is that if I see a cookie jar on my kitchen top counter, every single day after dinner, I'm going to grab and eat a cookie. And it takes a lot of willpower. Okay, let me say that again. It takes a lot of willpower and a lot of motivation in order for me to avoid eating that cookie. And it's like, why would I put myself in a situation where I am unnecessarily tempted and relying on motivation to overcome it? Why would I do that when I can actually simply remove it? I have plenty of other things in my life that I need to save my motivation for. Remember, I don't want to use motivation if I don't need to. So the solution is not to overcome and have self-control not to eat the cookie. The solution is not to have cookies, not to have the cookie jar. So the cookie jar effect means that what we're doing is we're going to set up the environment to be conducive of success. If next to your studying desk, you have your phone, and then you've got your PlayStation or your Xbox, and you've got your TV, and then, I don't know, like your dog sleeps next to you, and you're like, time to do some nice relaxing study. And you've got distraction here and here and here, and then out the window, you've got another one. The chances of you actually getting stuff done is much, much lower based on the fact that you now need to use willpower to overcome this and this and this and this and this. So that is a situation where you're using up a lot of willpower just to get stuff done. So remove the cookie jar. Get rid of these cookie jars. Study somewhere else. Put your phone away. Give it to your mom. Make it part of the consequence. Give it to someone else. Use a website blocker so that it's not distracting you. Use an incognito mode, on your browser so that when you go onto YouTube to look for educational content to help you study, you're not met straight in the face by PewDiePie or whoever your favorite YouTuber is telling you to watch his newest recommended video. You got to remember, YouTube is an entire website where they're putting millions of dollars into making you stay on that website and watch video again, again, and again, and again. And the same with things like Netflix. These things are actually created to distract you. So if you're putting yourself right in the line of fire, don't be surprised if you get shot and then end up procrastinating. So use things like incognito, where you're not signed in, where you're not going to have to see these recommended ones. And instead, you just see those random recommended ones that show up when you log in as a guest and you think, who actually watches all these things? When you study, study in a different room entirely. One of my students, actually Olivia, the student that I gave you the story about before, she actually studied in a garage. Yes, literally, she moved a desk into her garage and studied in there because there was nothing else to do. So when you set up your environment, and I've actually mentioned this before, people that have high levels of discipline are equally distractible. Okay? The difference between someone who is very focused and gets a lot done versus someone who is easily distracted and procrastinates a lot is not in how easy they are to be distracted in terms of their own neurology. They are equally distractible. The person that's focused actually spends time to create an environment where the distractions can't even enter in the first place. Whereas a person that's distracted relies on willpower. And yes, it might work for you for a short period of time, but please trust me when I say this, it won't work for you a long time. It's not sustainable. So E stands for environment. Go and look through your environment. Make a list of all the things that are distracting you and go and remove the cookie jars. D goes on from that. D stands for a distractions cheat sheet. So a distractions cheat sheet is a really simple, very easy thing to do. Literally all you're doing is you're getting a piece of paper and you're going to have it next to you while you're studying. Every time you get distracted, you're going to write onto this cheat sheet what it was that distracted you. Okay, what was the distractor? And that means that the next time you can take this information and set up your environment so that distractor is removed. So you might initially think, okay, I've taken my phone away, and you're still getting distracted. What are you getting distracted by? You're getting distracted by your dog. So don't study next to your dog. And I'm sorry, you can't study next to your dog if that's distracting you, because it's more important. You can't take care of your dog if you're too stressed out because you're failing your exams, okay? In order to look after your dog, you need to study away from them. So a distractions cheat sheet, super, super easy. You can look at all the things that are distracting you. And when you get distracted, you write it down. It doesn't always help you in the moment, but it does help you for next time. And actually, one good thing is that sometimes it does actually help you in the moment, because the fact that you have a sheet of paper next to you that is literally tracking your distractions makes your brain more aware of being distracted and therefore makes it less likely for you to be distracted. So all of these three things, when you put them together, they become pretty powerful, and this actually becomes your bread and butter. So I would say that if you just do this well, you will be able to put a cap on procrastination 70 to 80%, which makes a big dent. Now the S simply stands for creating a schedule. And in terms of creating a schedule, you just follow the guidelines of good scheduling that we've already covered. So if you're weak on those, go and review that video because we've already covered those guidelines. So make sure you have a schedule and reflect on them and see how it's going. But it just means that you've got a bit more structure to your week and your day. And the final thing is the M, which stands for minimum viable goals. And this is one of my pride and joys. A minimum viable goal is, okay, this is the definition of a minimum viable goal. It is the easiest and most achievable step towards your goal. Okay? The important word here, or words, is the easiest and most achievable. So a minimum viable goal, by definition, is achievable because it is always easy enough to be achievable. So let me give you an example. Let's say that your goal is to study maths for 2 hours. This is your goal. Okay. Now, your brain, again, because it's like, oh, is this really worth it? I don't know if this is going to be giving me the short-term dopamine hit of gratification that eating a massive cheeseburger or playing a game with like bells and whistles and ding ding sounds is going to give me. I don't know if it's worth it. Maybe I'll just procrastinate instead. Your brain is going to think that when it looks at 2 hours, it's like 2 hours and 2 hours, it's going to be that meme where you see that person's face and then like maths is like flying everywhere. Like in 2 hours, I could play the game for like 20 minutes. And then, in that time, I could have actually like done this and I could have done this. And like, I'm losing so much opportunity within this 2 hours. You don't want your brain to think about 2 hours. So what you do is you break this goal down into the minimum viable goals. So instead of 2 hours, you say, okay, well, look, forget about 2 hours. Let's just do 1 hour first. And then after I do 1 hour, maybe I'll feel good and I'll do an hour and a half. And after I do an hour and a half, maybe I'll feel good and I'll do 2 hours. But you know that you're never going to be able to get to doing 2 hours without doing 1 hour anyway. So it's like, all right, I might as well, if I schedule to do 2 hours over here, well, look, I never know if I'm actually going to get it done. Just because I scheduled 2 hours over here, if I procrastinate for an hour and a half, I'm not getting 2 hours of study done, right? That's a given. So I need to make sure I just overcome procrastination. So whatever, I plan to do 2 hours, but really, let's just be happy with doing 1 hour. And after that, maybe I'll feel good and I'll do an hour and a half, and then maybe I'll do 2 hours. So the idea, the hope with this is that we will eventually be able to do the 2 full hours. But you don't want your brain to realize that you're wanting to do 2 hours. You want to tell it like, look, we're not doing 2 hours, okay? Listen to me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Deep in the eyes. We're only doing 1 hour. Trust me. We're only doing 1 hour. And when we get to 1 hour, you say, look, just 30 more minutes. Pull through. Just 30 more minutes. And then you say, you know what? We're so close. Let's just do 2 hours. And this is what you want to do with your brain. You want to like trick it and lead it on. But actually, 1 hour is a lot as well. So why not actually just focus on doing it for 15 minutes, all right? 15 minutes. And you might think, 15 minutes? I can't do any real study in 15 minutes. That's not the point. That's not the point. You don't have to worry about getting any real study done in 15 minutes because the reality is, if you procrastinate, you don't get any study done in any amount of time. Doing 15 minutes now is at least better than spending 30 minutes procrastinating and not getting anything done and feeling super cruddy afterwards because you just procrastinated your entire life away. So the 15 minutes is not to say we're only doing 15 minutes. It's to say we're going to at least be able to do 15 minutes. And if we're feeling good, maybe we stretch that out to 30 minutes. And maybe if we're feeling good, we stretch that out to 45 minutes. And if we're feeling good, we stretch that to 1 hour. And then maybe that becomes 2 hours because we're leading our brain along. But on the same vein, we can even make this easier. 15 minutes? What about just 2 minutes? What about not even 2 minutes? In order for me to start studying, because that's the hardest part, right? Just getting started. What if all I need to do is sit at my desk with my books out? In fact, what if all I need to do is just sit at my desk? In fact, what if all I need to do is simply stand up from, if you're not at your desk already, if you're on the couch, what if I just need to stand up? In fact, what if all I need to do is look away from whatever I'm doing right now? And this is the minimum viable goal. This is the thing that takes 0.0001% motivation. This is the plan that was on the bottom of the curve. No matter what your motivation is doing, you're always going to have at least enough motivation to just look away. Let's say that you're sitting on the couch and you're watching TV and you're like, I just can't be bothered studying. All right, fine. You can't be bothered studying. Don't study, don't study, don't study. Look, just look away from the TV. Look away from the TV. Good. Now, all I want you to do is while you're looking away, reach for the remote, just turn the TV off. You can turn the TV back on, all right? Don't worry, brain. We're not going to study. We're certainly not going to study for 2 hours. We're just going to stand up. Okay, we're going to go sit at the desk. As soon as we sit at the desk, I promise, we're going to go back to the couch. All right, brain, listen to me. We're going to sit at the desk and we're going to go back to the couch, turn the TV on. We're going to watch TV again, okay? This is nothing. It's just, we're going to spend 30 seconds, look away, turn the TV off, stand up, sit at the desk, and then we're going to go back. That's it. We're just going to do that. But look, we're at the desk anyway. Let's just get the books out. Let's just get the books out. We'll just get the books out. As soon as the books are out, I'm not even going to put the books away. We're going to go back to the couch and we're going to watch TV again. That's fine. But since the books are out, let's just study for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, okay? I promise, just 2 minutes, and then we're done. And we're going to go back. I swear on my life, we're going to go back and watch TV again. Look, we've already done 2 minutes. Why don't we do 10 more minutes? Why don't we hit 15 minutes? And then we're going to feel kind of good. We did some study. Why don't we, we've gotten into it. And honestly, by this point, you're going to get to 30 minutes, 45, maybe even an hour. Even if your goal was to ultimately do 2 hours, if you only end up doing 1 hour, or maybe even only 30 minutes, you might think that that's a failure, but it's not. It's not a full win, because a full win would have been 2 hours, but it's almost a win. Because when it comes to procrastination, what is the hardest part? The hardest part is here. The hardest part is starting. We want to train our brain. Remember, we're always thinking about training our brain. We want to train our brain so that we get used to just starting. We want to turn that into finish my sentence, we want to turn it into a habit where we're doing it on autopilot, okay? And by doing this, okay, if we do it one time and we're only able to get to here, it's fine. As long as we started, we trained our brain at least a little bit. The next time we might get to here. But that's good. That's good. Because we trained our brain. And then over time, this becomes easier. It becomes easier, and now it takes very little effort, almost no effort, to at least just start studying. It takes very little effort just to start. Now what we need to focus on is going for a little bit longer, until it's easy to study for 1 hour. What we need to focus on is getting to 2 hours. Until it's easy to study for 2 hours, we need to focus on studying for the entire day. If we want to, which, you don't need to if you study efficiently. So this is the way that it works, is that we're building the habit, we're building it one step at a time. We're saying we can't get to the mountain without having the first step there sorted first. We can't start studying if we're not even at our desk. So there's no point thinking about studying until we're even at our desk. Okay? It's not about what you're able to get done at each step. It's about training our brain to turn the process of just starting into a habit, something that we do on autopilot. And eventually, you won't need to even think about this. Eventually, this will become very easy. And eventually, we won't have to think about it at all. We'll simply be able to sit and start and get into it. And I can honestly say that for me, and a lot of the iCanStudy team, and a lot of our students, in fact, as well, we don't procrastinate. We legitimately just never procrastinate because of the fact that we don't require motivation. We have environments that are highly focused. We keep each other accountable. And most importantly, we do the work that we need to do because it's a habit and we're used to it. And we are not creating a habit out of procrastinating. So use the BEDS-M system and remember, 30% failure rate, but only when you don't use it. And it's extremely rare for me to see someone that used this entire system and still was not able to put a cap on procrastination. Often, what I see is that people they're too afraid of this and they don't do it. Or they don't prep the environment as seriously. They kind of just say, oh, I'll put my phone on my bed behind me. Don't underestimate your ability to procrastinate. You are a professional procrastinator. Be honest with yourself. If you put your bed behind you, you're still going to get up and go get it. You need to put your bed somewhere that you are afraid to go and touch. Okay? So this, environment setup, often people get pretty lazy. They only do like the bare minimum that they can be bothered with the environment. I've had students who, procrastinated a lot and they completely solved it by literally locking some of their things away. They used to put their phone in a safe and then get their dad to set the password on the safe. So they legitimately couldn't enter it anymore. Website blockers, where if they try to change the setting on the website that they blocked, their friend will get notified and they have to give them like $100. So people get lazy with this. They're too afraid to do it. People do the bare minimum when it comes to setting up the environment. A lot of people will do the distractions cheat sheet because it's just so easy and there's no fear about it. People will try to schedule. Often people don't follow all the guidelines that I gave. They only follow a couple of them and they fall into the same traps and mistakes. But this is one that people really seem to underestimate. They'll say, okay, the minimum viable goal of studying 2 hours is you study for 15 minutes. It's like, no, you missed the point. The point is that the starting is a difficult part. You need to create like 10 different goals before you even start. And then once you've done that, you want to make this part really, really smooth because this is much easier. Going from here to here is much easier than going from here to here. Okay, so don't get lazy, don't do the bare minimum, take it seriously, and together, let's just completely crush procrastination, right? Why don't we do that? Let's just absolutely destroy procrastination. And you can look at all the people getting distracted and procrastinating around you and think, man, I used to remember living a life like that. We can completely be beyond that. So the BEDSM system, a great foundation, good starter, relatively easy as long as you take it seriously. And this will then build onto some of the other systems that I'll teach you later on, which are even more effective than this, which is called the peer-peer system. And there are a lot of similarities. This is probably about a third of the peer-peer system already. So look forward to that. But before that, make sure that you're able to do this.